are you, Sherry?
I'm fine.
I'm feeling a little sleep deprived, I have to be honest.
Really?
Yeah, I feel like the restorative peace that I absorbed from the holiday season and the pace of the holiday season, I feel like that is a distant memory with absolutely no lasting discernible effects. I feel like I've been ridden hard and put away wet, and I'm not talking about the glorious sexy time version of that. I feel like a workhorse in a cold Midwestern livestock barn that's just trying to sleep standing up.
Is this maybe because the house alarm unset at like 4:45 a.m. this morning?
Yeah,
Unbeknownst to us.
Anytime late morning, if I wake up, it's kind of over,
Over, yeah.
So that's kind of the testy, tenuous period anyway. But yeah, I didn't expect our alarm to turn off at 4:45.
Yeah, the house alarm going off and the barnstorm sound from our son, who now has a job where he has to be in there at 5 a.m. Thank goodness it's only 15 minutes away, because it could be earlier.
Yeah, so that's why I'm sleep deprived today. I'm curious if you knew, like I knew he was interviewing and I knew that he might have gotten the job, but did you know he was starting this morning?
No.
Oh, so he communicates with you the same way he communicates with me?
Very well. Yeah, with a lot of grunts and eye rolls about how the communication level goes. Like, I'm curious, like, when did he know that he needed to start this job at 5 a.m. after coming in? I'm certain it was after midnight.
Yeah.
He's very quiet coming in at night. Like, he doesn't want to disturb us, but then I kind of felt like he just...
I think the reason he's quiet coming in is because even though he's of adult age, he's afraid we're going to talk to him about a curfew again if he wakes us up when he comes in at night. And so he's real good about that, because he doesn't want to have that conflict, that argument.
Yeah.
But somehow I think he thinks that when he's leaving pre 5 a.m. in the morning, he's going to work and, it's okay. This is a valuable thing I'm doing. I can be as loud as I want.
Or maybe it's because he was extremely exhausted from getting in so late and then have to hurry around in the morning, and he probably didn't give himself enough time to get ready. But
yeah,
well, hopefully you'll be able to catch a couple of earlier Z's, and maybe we'll find out if he works tomorrow.
That would be nice.
At the same time.
I don't know when he's coming home. I didn't know he was starting, so who knows? We'll see him at some point.
Yeah.
He's waiting to hear about this electrician apprenticeship that he's hoping to get. He's decided college is not the right move, and he's going to pursue this apprenticeship. And so this is a good thing that he's found some temporary work in the meantime. But my goodness, he communicates like a guy who's used to living on a college campus with no one to answer to. That much is for sure.
He learned so much in 3 months.
He did. He learned how to not talk to anybody like a pro.
Like we're not even a part of his life.
Well, I tell people I coach college and high school soccer, and whenever I say, "How are you?" to one of the players and they say, "I'm tired," I say, "Oh, come on. That can't be the way you engage with somebody. Everybody's busy. Everybody's tired. Don't tell me you're busy or tired." So I have good news, Sherry. I am caffeinated and I'm done whining.
Oh, good.
Let's get it going. Let's tell people about Ask Laura, our quarterly segment that's coming right up. Laura Hemmock is a licensed clinical social worker and a mental health therapist. She works with adults, both individuals and couples, working through the impacts of anxiety, depression, ADHD, addiction, obsessive compulsive disorder, bipolar disorder, trauma, and relationships issues. I feel like we should list the things she doesn't work on instead of the things she does. Her first quarterly episode with us of the Ask Laura series was episode 322, if listeners want to go back and check that out. What questions do you want to ask a therapist, if only you had a relationship with a therapist, or maybe you want a second opinion about that therapist you already have? Ask Laura. Send your questions via email to matt@soberandunashamed.com with Ask Laura in the subject. That's matt@soberandunashamed.com for Ask Laura. Today we don't have Laura, but we have Amy. Amy, what is a juicy question we could ask Laura? What's a situation you see regularly and you might appreciate a second opinion?
Well, I'm a couples therapist, so I work only with couples. So I would like to ask Laura, is she ever sitting in a session looking at the couple across from her and saying, I think you guys should get divorced in her head?
Oh, I knew I was going to like you, and I do already. That's a good one. I,
I mean,
One of
I
my
know,
favorite.
I was gonna say, I know we like see it in our groups. Like we don't necessarily have a whole lot of couples we work with, but we've known both sides of the story, and we kind of think, huh,
that's not
I
going to
wonder
work.
what their marriage counselor's telling them. Because I don't see,
Exactly.
I hear different stories, you know. Oh,
So what
Well,
do you
and
do?
some do, and some do. One of my favorite movies is Bad Moms with Mila Kunis, and she and her husband are in therapy, and Wanda Sykes is like, "Well, every marriage can be saved," and at the end of the session, she's like, "You two should get divorced," I know it's a lot of responsibility, and people when they come to couples therapy are looking at an expert sometimes to tell them you should get divorced. So it's a lot of responsibility. So that's something that, unless there's a abusive, toxic situation where they should definitely be separate, that I don't want to be the one to tell them that. I want to give them the information they need to make that decision on their own. So, people surprise you. Sometimes I do a consultation call and I think this is going to be rough, and they show up and they do great, and sometimes they don't. So, I don't really tell people that unless it's super toxic and they need some separation.
Whatever thing people are working on, whatever direction they're going to, positive or negative, it seems to me that there's a process to getting from starting point to end point. And you, as a professional, I'm sure you can see where they're going sometimes, but you do have to let them work through the process. They probably wouldn't receive something as definitive as a statement like that from you.
Yeah,
But so they've got to kind of get there on their own, and you just try to guide with an empathetic
absolutely.
hand, it sounds like.
Yeah, I think the closest I get, and I'm not just a, how do you feel therapist. I am a directive therapist. I fall a little bit more on that spectrum, but sometimes what I'll say to them, when I see something that's obvious, like this is not going to work, I'll say to the other person, well, this is the data you have, and you get to decide what to do with that data.
I really like that.
yeah.
That's good stuff. Well,
Mhm.
listener, I know you love her already, like Sherry and I do. Amy Lombardi is a licensed professional counselor who runs the Lombardi Center for Relationships in the Chicago area. She's been working with couples for a quarter century. Doesn't that somehow sound more impressive
Just
than
thinking,
25 years?
I was gonna say, that sounds impressive, but it also sounds like a really long time.
Of course, yeah. So
It's just-
It's a
unfortunately,
long
Amy,
time.
that means like Sherry and I, you're old. Sorry, but
in
not
our
too old.
prime.
In
Well,
our
I have to say, I saw in your work that you were born in 73, and so was I. So
Yeah,
we're
baby.
all on
Gen
the same
X.
page here.
That's great.
Again, the prime. We're in our prime.
Amy is both Gottman and Terry Real trained. They are the biggest names in modern couples counseling, so that's good. In 2025, Amy started what has turned out to be quite a successful foray into social media. You can find her at Amy on Relationships on Instagram or TikTok. And that's where we found her. A particular reel caught my attention. After working with thousands of people, Amy, you did a thoughtful exploration and realized that you could think of zero clients whose lives were enhanced by drinking. Now, zero is a pretty clear number. I'm curious, what's the rough percentage of clients where alcohol is a spoken contributor to the relationship dysfunction that they come to see you about?
Yeah, it's a great question. Whenever people ask me percentages, it's really hard because I don't have a research team kind of compiling this data. It seems like some weeks, it's on everyone's mind, and it seems like another week can go by and it's not. But I would say of my clients coming in and they want to talk about alcohol, that's potentially about 20%. But think about this. With every client I see, the way they show up in their relationship has ties to the way they were raised. And so
Mm-hmm.
when you think about how many of my clients have been impacted by a parent's drinking and they bring that into the relationship dynamic, well, that's much higher than 20.
Sure. That's really interesting. Um, so when you thought back and you had this kind of this epiphany and this thoughtful consideration, were you surprised that you couldn't think of anybody for whom alcohol had been a benefit in their lives?
Yeah, yeah, I was, and thinking about kind of how it shows up in my office is, we got in another big fight while we were drinking that night.
Yeah.
And, when we are drinking, the odds of conflict that gets really escalated just goes through the roof. So there's that. And then there's the more of the problematic behavior, someone coming in saying, I think my partner's drinking too much. I'm really struggling with that. And then that's really a big thing that we have to talk about in a session. But either way it shows up, like thinking of a way that it has enhanced someone's relationship, nothing really comes to mind.
When it comes up, when it's obviously a conflict in the relationship, and let's say it's a situation where there's one person who's the drinker and another person who is not, or can take it or leave it, it's not important in
Mhm.
their lives. Is there a hump that you have to get over to? Where I'm going with this is, for a long time, I thought Sherry and I had this variety of relationship problems, and alcohol wasn't one
Mhm.
of them. It took me a long time to recognize that the first thing I needed to do was get sober and then see what was behind it. Is that a
Yeah,
hard sell for some of your clients?
absolutely, absolutely. And I kind of say it the same way to each person. I say I'm sorry that I have to deliver this news because drinking is everywhere. I mean, it's in every social event. It's holidays, restaurants, every advertisement. And so I think that's a really hard thing to have to look at. And so many people, what I find, and maybe you find this too, is don't really know what defines a problem. So they think, well, I'm making it to work every day, so it's not a problem.
Mm-hmm.
Or,
Oh yeah.
at times I've quit for a month, so it's not a problem. And I'm like, well, those aren't in the criteria. So letting them know the criteria, if they're coming to see me, a relationship issue, an interpersonal relationship is already affected by alcohol. That's one of the two criteria that have to be met. They're halfway there. So I think
Mm.
surprising, that to them, it's something that they don't want to hear. And I am really sad to deliver the news. It's everywhere. Alcohol is everywhere.
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
Mhm.
I think our listeners would be really mad at me if I don't ask the follow up. What's the other criteria?
Okay, so the alcohol use disorder is the disorder, and it's got 10 criteria.
Okay.
So typically, what I would see with my couples coming in is it is affecting an interpersonal relationship. And the other thing I see is there have been efforts to cut down that haven't been met. So they've been
Yeah.
saying, you know what, I think maybe we should only drink on the weekends, or you know what, I think when we go out, we should only have a couple drinks. And then they end up, oh, and then we had 5 drinks and we had 6 drinks. It's like, well, having these efforts to cut down that you're not meeting is just their criteria number two. You
Yeah.
throw a DUI in there, you're at 3.
Yeah.
So they don't have to be, you know, not making it to work or drinking in the morning by themselves to meet that criteria. And if it's a problem, the next thing I say is, we can try to go to moderation, but the possibility is this may be a case for abstinence.
Yeah. That's so interesting. The first two things you mentioned as criteria that I have for years now felt like, in fact, I call them the two big questions. You can take these 15 or 20 or 25 question surveys on the internet about whether or not you have a drinking problem. But
Mhm.
I've always said there are two big questions. Do you think about alcohol when you're not drinking alcohol, either in a positive way or a negative way? And then
Right.
is it causing you problems in life? And don't try to quantify, oh, it's a big problem. That's a small problem. It's no big. No,
Yeah.
if it's causing you
Is
problems
it
and you're
causing a
thinking about it
problem?
when you're not drinking, and it's really interesting how that overlaps with the first two things you said as well. Super, super
Absolutely.
fascinating. Can you talk a little bit about you've made your own personal decision around alcohol? And I know that you read This Naked Mind by Annie Grace. Annie's
Hmm.
great. She lives here in Colorado, actually.
Oh,
And
awesome.
that, I don't know if you know that is by far the most popular piece of Quitlet ever.
Uh-huh.
It's been the Amazon top seller in this category for many, many years. So I'm glad that was the book that helped you with your
I had no
discernment.
idea. Yeah, I had
Oh
no
yeah,
idea.
she's a rock star. Can you talk a little bit about your own personal decision around alcohol?
Sure, sure. I mean, I think like many people, I'd always been a social drinker, and when we probably have kids around the same age, when your kids are younger, I don't want to wake up not feeling good the next day, or you're busy with their activities. And then I became an empty nester. And just for personal, I went through a divorce in 2018. So then I had the kids, not have the kids sometimes on the weekend. And then if you're dating, it's more present. So I went from like a 1 to 2 drink to like, wow, I'm noticing that I'm maybe having 3 now, or I'm maybe having 4 now. But the biggest thing that got me is My mother was actually diagnosed with Alzheimer's in her 60s, so young. And then we watched just, it's a terrible, I don't know if you've had anyone go through,
Mhm.
it's a terrible disease. And then she passed at 75. And so I pay a lot of attention to what are the things we can and can't do that might help us, because I know my siblings and I are terrified of, that being something that happens to us. So there were more and more things coming about. Even moderate alcohol use is being
Yeah.
found to increase the risk of Alzheimer's. So I actually, sometimes you might say like your guests or the people in your meetings can actually be your teachers. So it's funny, I was working with a client who needed to stop using alcohol in her life. And the next time I met with her, she just said, "I'm done. I don't ever want it again. It's been easy." And I said, "What did you do?" And she said, "I read this book."
Mm. Yeah.
And so I bought The Naked Truth or The Naked Mind. I was maybe 3 chapters into it, and I was like, "Yeah, sold. It's
Yeah.
not, I don't need it."
Yeah. Well, I love that I mean, basically what you're leading toward when you talk about the impact that it has on our health, Alzheimer's and other negative consequences
Hmm.
is, when you remove the kind of societal candy coat of
Hmm.
alcohol off and you look at what it really is,
Yeah.
it's a toxic substance. I
It's
mean,
poison. Yeah.
a buzz is your brain not working at full
Yeah.
capacity, so there's no part of it that's not bad for you. I'm glad that we're out of the era where we look at the tannins from
The red
red
wine.
grapes as some kind of benefit. Like,
Yeah.
have a blueberry, man. It's the same thing and it won't kill you.
Yeah.
So that's all very, very fascinating, very interesting. I want to back up for a minute. You started with a career in finance and decided that
Mhm.
wasn't for you. Then you
Mhm.
pursued kind of a general therapy practice and quickly decided couples work was for you. Now, when I first heard you say that, it made me laugh because Sherry is the children's minister at our church, and we had
Mhm.
an associate pastor years back that we love. We love this woman so much. But I remember when she was in her mid 20s and she was preaching on marriage. And I sat there listening to her thinking, what the hell do you know? You've been married for like 15 minutes and you're preaching
Yeah.
on marriage. I'm wondering, did you battle imposter syndrome when you started doing couples counseling early on, and how did you overcome them?
Absolutely. I mean, even though it was my second career, I did finance for 5 years. So I was 28, 27 going into this field. And so, yeah, I would think people would look across at me and say, I was married, but I was only married a couple years at that point. What would I know? And then also, I think just, most therapists, when we start as a generalist. We see everything. And so sadly, we're not adequately trained to work with couples. So I felt like an imposter for that reason too, because you just don't know. And so that's when I went and got the Gottman certification. And that just gave me so much more confidence and like a plan and a path to work with couples. So yeah, absolutely. I feel like an imposter being on the show. You're my second podcast. Is that fair?
Well, yes, but I love the fact that you accepted our invitation with vigor, and here we are having a great conversation. So
Anything
that's
new, right? Anything new
that's the way
makes you
you
feel
get
like
over the
this.
hump. We talk a lot about self confidence and self esteem because honestly, I think that's the most important aspect of recovery. Whether you're
Hmm.
a drinker in sobriety or you're the loved one who's trying to recover from the trauma you've been through, I think that self esteem piece is so important. And we're just hearing more and more people talk about don't wait until you feel good about yourself to do the thing. Do the thing, even if you fail. And that's how you build self esteem
And
because you
you'll
pick
feel good
yourself
about
up and you keep
yourself.
going.
Yep.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
One of the things that we talk a lot about, both on the podcast and with the folks that we get to know, is resentment processing. We are,
Mhm.
kind of believers in what's talked a lot about now these days about the fact that trauma just doesn't go away. It needs to be addressed. And
Mhm.
for us, when we use the term resentment processing, we're talking about when couples talk about traumatic experiences of the past. And it's important that they be able to do so without it re-traumatizing them. So, for an example, when you've got an alcoholic relationship that is in sobriety and they're trying to work on recovery, if they're in brand new sobriety, it's often the case that alcoholic, they can't go there yet. They can't go into the
Mhm.
traumatic experiences of the past without it blowing them up and going into
Mm-hmm.
a shame spiral, for instance. But eventually, when they can do that, when they can communicate with listening skills and empathy,
Mm-hmm.
I've kind of got a double question based on me presenting to you what we call resentment processing. Do you agree with the idea that trauma does need to be addressed? And then also, you've talked about defensiveness in communication. And so there's a lot of defensiveness in resentment processing. Whose job is it to avoid the defensiveness? Is it the talker or the listener's job?
I love both
That's
questions.
like an essay question for a college entrance
I was going to
exam.
say that you got to separate
Was,
those two questions.
that's too
Yeah,
much.
I mean, trauma is not the incident that happened. Trauma is how it's stored in the body, and
Okay.
so how it continues to stay there. So absolutely, I mean, and what we know about substance use disorder and the other disorders in the DSM is they're mostly trauma based. If you think about it, they come from this place of trauma. So I work with a lot of people on marriage trauma, but also childhood trauma that's getting in the way of the things that are
Yeah.
happening in the relationship. So we absolutely have to go there. I mean, it provides yourself, but the partner also with empathy and understanding. Like, oh, it makes sense why he's doing that, or oh, it makes sense why she's doing that. And so it's not only for the person, understanding their own trauma, it's for their partner to understand their trauma, not because it's okay to continue to do the destructive behavior, but because we can have some empathy and understanding around that. So yeah, absolutely. And in my own life, realizing I had some family of origin trauma and starting to address that in college, and then you get in a relationship and you do marriage counseling, and then like I said, I went through a divorce, and then I did counseling on my own shame and guilt and sense of failure around that, as well as, how did I lose my voice in this relationship and where does it come from? And so
Mm,
with each new situation, you're going to get better. You're going to be better and better and better, but I feel like it's a lifetime journey. You'll
yeah.
always be in some way impacted by that. Do you want more on that, or can we go to the defensiveness question?
I want to ask one quick follow up
Sure.
because I feel like the chatter around the self help world, I feel like there's pendulums that swing back and forth. And I feel like the idea that for many of us there's childhood trauma that needs to be addressed. I feel like that was hot and heavy, and I bought it, and I still believe it. When I think about the
Mhm.
things that distress me as a 52-year-old dude, I can tie it back to a conversation with my father really easily.
Yeah.
So I buy that. But now I feel like the pendulum is swinging and people are like, everyone ties everything to childhood trauma. Everyone's blaming everything on their childhood. Y'all had fine
Yeah.
childhoods. Suck it up. Put on your big boy pants. But it sounds to me like you believe that the origin of a lot of our distress really is childhood trauma. It's not just a fad.
Without a doubt.
Okay.
Without a doubt. And I started doing therapy when we were in the mode of like, your HMO is paying for 8 sessions and there wasn't time to really go into trauma, and now, in the last 15 years, I think like the technology, the SPECT scans, the functional MRIs are showing that trauma is related to this. And like, when I go listen to like, if you know these names like Bezel van der Kolk and Gabor Mate
Oh,
and,
yeah.
the Richard Schwartz, the big people on trauma. Absolutely. I've never had a couple. I'm sure there's one or two, but I want to say I have almost never had a couple who there wasn't a root in what they were doing based in. Now, trauma is a big word. I would say it could be trauma, it could be wounds. If you
Mm-hmm.
grow up in a household where really your parents, did a great job, secure environment, but your brother was always the one getting the better grades, you have
Mm-hmm.
wounds about being less than.
Yeah.
And those are gonna come up in your relationship. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Without it, I have zero worries about that. Trauma, I definitely see as connected.
Okay. Great. How about the defensiveness piece? Who is that? The talker or the listener that needs to be wary?
I love that one because I'm doing a lot on that one right now, and they're getting a lot of attention. So my answer is both. The
Okay.
speaker is responsible for giving feedback versus criticism, and the listener is responsible for being accountable or validating versus getting defensive. And if you play tit for tat and say, I'm only going to give you a listening response if you say it the right way, then you're in a losing cycle, right? Because at any given point, one of you is not going to be mature enough to do it the exact right way. So it's my responsibility how I deliver the message, and it's my responsibility how I receive the message, even if it is not delivered in a nice way.
So talk about the delivery, just not combative, not accusatory, just kind of factual, matter of fact, and kind.
Yeah, and I want to tell you that's really why I went on social media. I have a full practice. It wasn't like to drum up business. It was like I see so many people who can afford and are in my area or are able to come to my area and see me. What about the people who can't, you know?
Right.
And the information is out there. If we're going to give feedback, Gottman's very basic 3-step model. This is what happened. This is how I felt. This is what I would have liked instead. That's feedback. When you came home late yesterday, I felt unimportant. Next time, can you let me know ahead of time? That is feedback. That's assertive. That's not aggressive. That's not mean. That's not critical, right? So that format has been around for 40 years. Like that would be a great way to give your partner some feedback.
Yeah, that's great. And then on the receiving end, can you talk a little bit about what's effective communication on the receiving end?
Sure. On the receiving end, if someone's giving you feedback, you want to validate something. So validation can be take accountability for whatever part in it was your own, or put some understanding or some appreciation or some empathy around it. Like if that person comes to me and says, you were late yesterday and it really hurt my feelings, and I can say, I was late and I'm really sorry about that. That's it.
Well, and especially I think when in the 3-part delivery of the message or the negative feelings or the hurt, the solution that was asked for was, can you communicate better? It wasn't, can you never be late? And so if they're asking for a corrective action that's actually doable, right? Like because what I think, and I'm wondering if you see this sometimes, somebody delivers it properly. You were late. That hurt my feelings. Can you communicate next time? If the person immediately goes to, well, I work a stressful job and I can't, I don't know when I'm going to get home. Aren't you like, whoa,
I see that
you're missing
all
the
the time.
Right?
I see that all the time. Yes, lived it, and see it all the time. Yeah, so I mean, really, that is a moment of emotional dysregulation, right? That person just heard something, even if they heard the message, the delivery was fine, but for some reason it hit that wound, that trauma, that wound, and now they're reactive. They heard that they're not good enough, that they're the bad guy, that they're being scolded, that they're being judged, and that's what they're reacting to. So, just that moment of emotional regulation, if you could pause and take 1 or 2 breaths and slow it down and say, you know what, I was late. I'm sorry. I see that hurt your feelings. Period. Can I tell you what happened? Fine. But I was working late. This is what provides everything. You don't care about me. That's not an okay response.
Right. And if that is a separate wound, is that a message for another day? Like, let's not conflate the two and
exactly.
Okay.
So like, what if I get defensive because the other person always is attacking me? Okay, well, validate it in the moment. And in a separate day when you're calm and you're not fighting, say, hey, same feedback. I notice regularly that, when you bring things up to me, I feel really criticized. Can we work on a way to communicate together so that we don't fall into that pattern and I don't get defensive to you? That's a separate conversation. It's not meant to be had in the moment when someone is giving you feedback about how they were hurt. Because unfortunately, if you defend, you dismiss what was being said, your partner is actually going to get angrier because they were unheard. And now they're going to come in stronger. You're going to feel more defensive and you're going to get stuck in this vicious loop, where you just said, yeah, I mean, we're human. I messed up. I'm sorry, I messed up. Let's talk about how we can make our dates be maybe a little bit later so I'm not stressed about getting out the door at work. Okay. Let's do that.
That gap, that separation of the two issues, it's so important. I'll give you a great example, completely off topic. I know you love when I do this. I was running the other day and I was running through a park that has a leash law, and a dog like jumped up at me and he was snarling in his teeth. And and it was unfortunate. And the woman, it was actually over the holidays, so it was really quiet. And so she had him off leash, and I could tell she felt awful. And she said, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." And I said, "Yeah, he really needs to be on a leash." And she said, "I agree." And I kept running. So to me, it was over. And then she yelled back over me, "I was just picking up somebody else's dog poop who was too inconsiderate to pick it up." And I stopped and I turned around. And I said, "Man, I wish you hadn't said that." Because now I got to tell you, your thing you're doing has nothing to do with me getting snarled at and attacked by your stupid dog. If you had just kept your mouth shut, but it kind of makes me think of that, right? Because
you can tell he's still mad about it, right?
It's exactly that, though.
I didn't get validation from that lady. She didn't get it.
It's exactly that. She validated. She started good.
She
validated. She validated you first. And like you said, if she would have just I always tell people, don't put a but I'm only out here because.
Yes.
Put a period. Done. Okay. Validation. And that's a separate issue. And again, that's a thing of like 2 wrongs don't make a right. Someone leaving dog poop out there doesn't mean it's okay to let your dog go off leash. And I think when you only defend because you're being attacked, your 2 wrongs don't make a right. Someone's got to get it back on track. And I always want people to feel empowered that no matter how their partnership shows up, they have another move. So say you get defensive, say I do it right. I give my feedback right and you get defensive. I can say to you, I can tell that was received defensively. What did you hear me say? Oh, I heard you say I'm an idiot. Oh gosh, I didn't mean that. Let me say it differently.
Yeah. That's really interesting. We've been working on repair of our relationship with our daughter, who is our oldest. She's in her early mid-20s. And so she was impacted the most by my drinking before my sobriety. And she has started asking me to do that. Repeat back, like when we're having serious conversations, repeat back to me what I said to make sure we're on the same page. It's very effective. It makes her feel
so effective.
Really and I don't even have to agree, because sometimes she says something and I'm like, that's going to be hard for me to agree with, but I can repeat back what you said. I can acknowledge that I was listening.
Validation. And I always say this to people, validation does not mean agreeing. You know, if someone says like, you never do the dishes, I don't agree with that. But I might say, you know what? I think you've been doing the dishes more than I have. That's not fair. That's something I can do. You brought up paraphrase. So, I mean, when we first go to school, that's all we're taught is how to paraphrase and reflect back. Paraphrase, paraphrase, paraphrase. And paraphrase, I would say, is the most underused skill I think people should use. It means so much to someone when you just say, this is what I heard. Did I get it? Yeah. 1, it lets them know that you were listening. And 2, if there was any mismatch in information, it can be cleared up right then and there. So, I mean, people probably get sick of me. I'm like, I want you to just paraphrase what they just said. It's very important. Very important.
That's great, because I think a lot of people, when they receive a feedback, they are trying to process it and they're trying to think it through. And so the silence, like, there's some value to it. It doesn't mean they're ignoring you necessarily. Sometimes they are, but that can be a very lonely feeling when you're on the receiving end of someone sitting and thinking and processing. So if they can get the paraphrase first, okay, I know he/she heard me. I'll give them time to think about it before they want to give a response now. I think it's very valuable. I love it.
When in doubt, paraphrase. When you don't know your next move, paraphrase. This is what I'm hearing. Did I get it? Absolutely.
That's great.
Yeah.
Two common reactions that we hear about when people are talking about this resentment processing, this talking through things that have caused pain. Two common reactions that are not effective is, DARVO is one. You're familiar with that acronym?
I am.
Yeah. So
he knows what it means.
Yeah.
He can remember
it all the time, but I can never remember the 5. I'm like, who cares?
Well, it means, to be honest, it's relatively new. Like, when I started, I didn't know it till I started seeing people comment it in my post. And I'm like, what is this DARVO thing? And now, yeah, absolutely. I wrote it down. Deny, attack, reverse, victim, and the offender.
Yeah.
And so I do videos on it. Yeah.
Well, that really, to me, that's like launching a counterattack. Like, there's no gray area there. It's, you talked about blueberries and I started talking about peaches, man. I am mad and I'm going to tell you why. But something that you talk about, which I think is really interesting, and I think it's a little more subtle. I've heard you talk about blame shifting. When someone brings something, and I'm not going to tell you, told me the thing I did wrong. I'm not going to tell you the thing you did wrong, but I'm going to tell you, oh, I can never do anything well enough to satisfy you. So I just made it your fault instead of mine.
Right. You're never happy.
Yeah.
It's always something.
Do you see that a lot? Can you talk about that?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, I do. And that post actually got a lot of attention. So it's like someone brings something up, like we were just talking about. Someone brings something up that's bothering them or that they want to talk about or that hurt them. And the other person will say something that like completely ignores any accountability or any validation. And now it's the other person's fault because of the way that they brought it up, or because they always bring something up, or they're never happy, or the timing's not great, or whatever. And the thing that needs to get discussed doesn't get discussed, and the other person's in trouble for something that they're doing. And it's just a way to completely shift facing what was just brought up to you.
Yeah.
And it shuts down everything. It shuts down the connection. It shuts down the intimacy. It shuts down the honesty. It shuts down everything.
When someone is on the receiving end of that blame shifting, how do they respond? What's the right way to bring it back around to the actual topic?
Yeah, I mean, usually they're off to the races at that point, and I kind of jump in. But I would say, I'm hearing that you have something to say, and we can work on that. But I brought up my issue first, so let's work on the issue I just brought up, and then maybe tomorrow or later this week, we'll sit down and talk about that you always feel criticized, or that you feel like you're never doing enough. But right now I brought up something. So, you talked about the space and the breath and the slowing down. I think that's really important, because a lot of times someone doesn't avoid or shut something down because they don't care. They do it because they get overwhelmed. They're afraid of saying something wrong. They're afraid they're in trouble. So I encourage people to slow down and take a breath before they respond to something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's great advice. One of the things that I think is really interesting when we hear from people that that's how their partner has responded. I brought up this very legitimate issue. I did it calmly. I was respectful. And then they said, well, I can never do anything right around you. I hear a lot of the people that we meet say, basically give the idea that this is like a premeditated manipulation, like they're married to some evil genius who has all these tricks up their sleeve. I don't feel that way. I know as a former emotional abuser myself, as a manipulator myself, I didn't sit around and plan it all out. This was just my gut reaction, and it wasn't a very healthy one. Respond. Is that what you see?
Yeah, I agree with that. And a lot of responses on my post are like, well, that's a narcissist. And I think that, yes, there are definitely some people that we are dealing with that have narcissist personality disorder, and that's a different thing. But a lot of these are just they're just adaptive behaviors, honestly, that we learned younger. So say you had a very critical parent, or say sometimes it's things you don't think about. Like a lot of people were, I was raised in the 80s. It was like, go out and come home at night. We figured a lot of things out on our own. And now here's this person telling me that they know a better way to do it. How dare they? So like our stuff just comes up and we get frozen, or we want to fight back. We're actually like in our fight and flight part of our brain. And then we respond that way.
Yeah,
but if we slow down,
sense.
We can get adult and be like, yeah, I was late. I'm really sorry for that. But what we're hearing is this younger message of, I'm a failure, or I'm being scolded, or I'm being controlled, or I'm being punished. And that's where the reaction comes from.
Goes back to that lack of self-esteem that we talked about earlier, too.
Yeah.
And I was just thinking a lot of that would be, like you mentioned, from childhood. It would be a wound, and it's not necessarily a self-deprecation, because I feel like that is often, when I hear that out of the people that we work with, and they say, my partner's like, oh, I can never do anything right for you. You're too critical, and blame shifting. They kind of started out with this like sort of self-deprecation, but it's really coming from this wound. And then shifting back to you out of defensiveness.
I agree.
Yeah.
It's like the inability to tolerate what's being said. You know, it makes you so uncomfortable because it hits a wound, you know, and I always explain to people, you know, when you think about PTSD, you think about someone, a veteran going overseas and like things are being detonated and the noises, and then they come back and they're safe, but a car backfires. They're not thinking, oh, a car is backfiring. They're thinking, holy, it's a bomb. You know, so that's how trauma lives inside of us and those wounds live inside of us. Like you said, a memory, like I can go back to this exact memory with my father when he said that. In that moment, you're not thinking, oh, this is my wife. It's not my dad. She's trying to bring up something rational. You're thinking, holy crap, it's my dad. You know, and so that's where that comes from. We can't tolerate it. We need to slow down, breathe for a second, and then we can kind of get back, we can get out of our fight and flight brain into our cortex and actually have an adult conversation about it. But in the moment, we're being hijacked.
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
I was wondering if we could go back to resentment processing. Matt and I had started this even before he quit drinking, doing like a weekly resentment processing. A friend of his that was in a healthy relationship introduced it to the concept to Matt, and we took it on weekly. It went haywire a lot of the times, and it was really long and exhausting conversations. So if you were to like present this to your couples in your practice, what would you like recommend as resentment processing, like with ground rules or weekly meetings, or like how would you plan that?
I'm laughing because this is my partner's favorite tool we use, the weekly check-in. So it does not, you know, I know that like sex addiction therapists talk about Thanos, like there's a certain format they follow. To me, it's 4 things, and it's a we approach, not a you did this wrong or you did that wrong, but it's a we approach. How do we feel this week? What did we think went well? What do we think did not go well? What do we think we need to work on next week?
Love it.
That's how I use it with couples, you know, so it's not a, let me tell you what you did, or you know, pointing. It's like, here's an interaction we had that I didn't think went well. What can we do next week to be better?
Is that sometimes the take home assignment that you give couples, and then to use this process when you're talking in my office?
Yeah, I think that the couples, you know, I'll see couples traditionally in a 2-day intensive. So I see couples who are like really in a bad way. And then we do these follow-up calls. So the couples who I see, you know, 6 months down the road or a year down the road who are doing well, they're checking in with each other. It's like that where things can go off track is when you just stop paying attention to where you guys are at. So the weekly check-ins is something that if you're working on your relationship, let's check in once a week. Otherwise, 2-3 weeks, months go by, and now the pile of crap is this big, and it's hard to overcome. So I recommend it for everyone. I think it's a good process, but it's not a scolding. It's this is how I felt. This is what I think went well. Here's something that didn't go well. We can work on it.
Oh, that's such great advice. Amy, grab a drink of water, take a break, get a breath of fresh air, and we will be right back to you after we tell people about our sponsors to pummel you with more questions. We are sponsored by...
I'm up for it.
I know you are. I can tell you got the Gen X energy coming. Love it. We are sponsored by SoberLink. SoberLink is the premier remote alcohol monitoring system, combining cutting-edge technology with compassionate design to support accountability and recovery in family law. It's the top-of-the-line handheld breathalyzer. Today, we're talking with Amy about techniques and tools to make relationships work. Whether we're building a house, repairing a car, tackling a plumbing project, or fixing our kid's bike, we know we need to use the right tools for the project. Relationship repair is no different. We need to choose the right tools for the job. And that's where SoberLink comes in. SoberLink is not just a handheld breathalyzer you buy at the drugstore or on the internet, a cheapie that breaks or gives unreliable results. SoberLink's best-in-class service and product combination includes built-in facial recognition and tamper detection, expert in-house support, emailed daily, weekly, or monthly reporting that's court admissible in all 50 states and Canada, unlimited testing days, and scheduled testing to build accountability and trust. SoberLink is the right tool for bringing trust back into a relationship wrecked by alcoholism.
So let me tell you what SoberLink is to me. It's a sign that you're serious this time, that you hear me when I tell you I can't trust you, that you're willing to put your ego aside for a second and do something for me and for our family. SoberLink is an indication that you love me more than you love the drinking, that you love the kids, and you are not selfish.
Right now, SoberLink is offering Intoxicated podcast listeners a free offer ID valid for a $100 enrollment bonus. Please go to soberlink.com/untoxicated.
So claim your offer ID for a $100 enrollment bonus. There is no commitment required to claim your offer ID while this promotion lasts. You can use your $100 enrollment bonus when you're ready to place your order. To claim your offer ID, you will only be asked to provide your name and email address. No personal details, no commitment, no credit card number. To claim your offer ID for a $100 enrollment bonus, please go to soberlink.com/untoxicated.
The Untoxicated podcast is brought to you by Stigma, the 501c3 nonprofit with programs focused on the impact of alcoholism and emotional abuse on intimacy in committed partnerships. In addition to the podcast, books, other writings, and videos produced by Stone Soup Publishing, the media arm of Stigma, Stigma is also a research organization.
We learn from you, our listeners, and we share with you what we learn. It's a growth and discovery oriented symbiotic relationship.
Right now, we are trying to learn more about your experiences with emotional safety and the opposite of emotional safety, emotional abuse. Whether you are wondering if you have experienced emotional abuse in your relationship, or you're wondering if your behavior could be considered emotionally abusive, we have confidential, easy to take surveys ready to help you better understand what you've experienced. Our surveys will only take a minute or two to complete, and as I said, we will hold your responses in strict confidentiality.
So please go to untoxicatedsurvey.org to take the survey that fits your situation. And as a thank you for your participation in our research, we will share helpful resources, including a free ebook, and we will respond directly to you to share your feedback on your experiences, our feedback on your experiences. Sorry, a little tongue-tied.
And if our connection and communication leads to you deciding to join one of our programs right now for a limited time, we're offering a free trial month.
Free resources, including a free book, free feedback from us, and a free month of participation. What do you have to lose?
Please go to untoxicatedsurvey.org. All right, Amy, I hope you're well rested and ready to tackle the second half of the game we're playing here, the Untoxicated podcast. Okay, let me give you a scenario. And I think this is a common one because I've heard you talk about it. One partner brings a concern to the other. Let's say in this scenario, because I think this is probably more common based on the rest of the scenario, it's the woman in the partnership that's bringing the concern to the man, and he hears it as an attack. A common response, you say, is for the man to shut down. Now, you've only known me for a short period of time, but I think you can tell that my response is probably not shut down. It's probably counterattack or in some other way talk.
Defend. Yep.
But I know you've got people that just shut down. What?
I do.
What are you talking about there? Is this like formal silent treatment, or is it just a walk away in the moment? And where does that come from?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to go back to something I said earlier. If you're reacting, that is dysregulation. If you're shutting down, that is also dysregulation. It just looks different. So it usually is exactly how you described it. The wife bringing something up, the husband shutting down. If the husband shuts down, it is typically not because they don't care. It's because they're overwhelmed. They're hearing a message that is very difficult for them to take in. They feel like if they answer it, they're going to answer it incorrectly. It's going to cause more of a conflict. And so they kind of freeze. And so that shutdown is that freeze. And for dysregulation that's hot and dysregulation that's shut down, the answer is the same. We're stuck in our reptile brain. We're stuck in fight and flight. And so that breathing is like the parasympathetic, sympathetic move us back into our prefrontal cortex. So in that moment, just saying, you know what, I'm a bit overwhelmed. I'm going to take in what you're saying. I think I need 5 minutes. Yeah. That's the answer for people who are doing that. They're stuck. Again, they've been hijacked in a different way. And, one of the things that John Gottman taught us was to keep like a little pulse ox in our office. So if you see someone who's like really emotionally dysregulated, you say, you do you mind if I just pop this on? And you see if their heart rate's above like 90, resting heart rate's like, 60, 70. It depends on your age and, condition. But if you're above 100, you're in that reptile part of your brain. But I'll tell
Oh,
you
yeah.
what, I would pop it on people who were frozen. And I'll never forget a gentleman sitting there, like his wife asking him all these questions and sitting there, and I just saw it. And I popped him on. His heart rate was 170, sitting as still as possible
Wow.
in this chair. So the thing is, like, our brain feels emotional threat in the same way it feels physical threat. So it's almost like that guy's being beaten in the moment and his heart rate's at 170. So I've seen a 140, I've seen these because and again it goes back, like I'm a parent, I get it. I don't think we should blame parents for everything. I get it. Sometimes it's just a perception of what happened. But can I explain what I see, like the most common dynamic that I see from a family of origin history? Is that okay?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Please.
So this is very typical for men. So they grew up with maybe both parents intact, but an emotionally unavailable father. Because I think
Okay.
learning about emotional availability for men is relatively new. So you
Sure.
grow up with this emotionally unavailable father and this mother who you either see the sadness as a boy. I think boys are very sensitive to their mother's sadness, or they feel like they don't want to make their mom hurt anymore, or the mom starts using them as their emotional sounding board because they're not getting it from dad. And how is a kid supposed to be that? Right? So boys are very sensitive to that. How does a kid get to be that? So they really shut down kind of their own wants and needs. And so they're afraid to say what they want. They're afraid to say what they need to ask for. And they're afraid of their mother's reaction. So they get frozen. Like that wound lives within their body. And now their wife is bringing up something like that. And I'll tell you the most common, because I give clients a list of triggers that they feel in this relationship. The most common triggers that I hear men say are they feel scolded, blamed, judged, controlled, or like they're the bad guy. So any message of delivery of you hurt me is met with that. Now I'm being scolded. Now I'm being controlled. Now I'm being blamed, and I don't know what to do with that. So they freeze. But freeze is just a different, like yelp at the defensive,ness and the shifting, criticism back, attack, defend, freezing. They're all adaptations.
That's so interesting. We talk a lot about one of the keys to recovery, individual recovery, that can benefit the relationship is trying to have a mindset of curiosity. So if Sherry brings me something, she's disappointed in the way I behaved or something that happened or whatever, rather than me thinking, oh, my wife is broken because she can't handle this thing or her perception is off. When I've got a curious mindset, my first thought is, I wonder what's making her feel that way. I wonder what stressor is creating this anxiety in her. Is it the action I took or maybe something else went bad in her day, but just coming at it from a place of curiosity. And I feel like that's kind of the opposite of what you're saying. I'm being scolded. I'm less than. I'm just going to turn inward and shut down, basically.
Exactly. And you hit the holy grail. For me, curiosity is so important. I say ABC, always be curious. I'll tell the client at the end of our work together, if there's only one thing you remember, use the move of curiosity. Like, I wonder what's going on with her, why she's so upset. I wonder if there's anything else. I wonder how she felt when that happened. If we can not be defensive and not be critical and be curious, I think that that's an amazing tool. And we've lost it. And even if you've been married, 20, 30, 40, I've had clients who've been married 50 years. We're always shifting. We're always changing.
Yeah.
Just ask a curious question. What's the worst part about it? How does it make you feel? Have you felt this way before? Just be curious about it. It's eye-opening.
It is. And that's particularly applicable in addiction recovery because part of being the addict is suffering a great deal of time spent in the shame cycle. We get out of the shame cycle, we go along for a little while, then we overdrink and we cause turmoil in our family. or we do something stupid or whatever, and then we're back in that shame cycle. And being curious when you're full of shame is almost impossible. We have to elevate our self-confidence to the point where we're not just beating ourselves to death and we feel okay about ourselves. And so now this thing you've brought to me, okay, I'm sure that I have a role in it. And I want to understand what my responsibility is and what my corrective action is, but I also want to understand how you're feeling and what other inputs there are. And so getting that's why one of the reasons I just think of alcohol as such a bad toxin, whether you're addicted or not. It can force you into these positions where you feel bad about yourself. And that's no good for interpersonal relationships. That's for sure.
It's a vacillation, right? Like and I think of a lot of what you said with infidelity, because I do see a lot of clients with infidelity and they go in that shame cycle and they can't hear. And like the behavior, the drinking or the cheating is grandiose behavior. It's above the line of healthy self-esteem.
Right.
And then when it comes to realization, it's in shame, below the line of healthy self-esteem, when both of those spaces don't pay attention to the person that's being hurt. It's either about my contempt turning outwards, or if it's about my contempt turning inwards. I feel so bad about this versus I hurt you so bad.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry about that. They're very different. And the curiosity of like, how did it feel when I was drinking? What are the worst things that happen? What are some things that you remember? And being able to tolerate and breathe through and stay regulated through the space of hearing the answer to that, even though it's difficult, because, I'm sure Brene Brown's work, like shame is terrible. It's destructive. And the antidote to it is vulnerability. Just saying, I want to hear how that bothered you. That's a more vulnerable conversation.
Yeah. Always be curious. I love that. I hear you talk. Yeah. ABC. Love it. I hear you talk about couples being disconnected a lot. In the addiction and recovery field, as it relates to relationships, we consider detachment to be the only potentially effective way a partner can influence an addict into sobriety. We can't fix people. I think we'd all agree with that. But we can detach from the situation and get healthy ourselves. And we can hope that we are a positive example. Either are a positive example or the pain of the detachment itself. One of the things can have an influence. I know I say all the time, the two things that got me sober were that my depression and anxiety were just going through the roof, alcohol-induced depression and anxiety. And Sherry was done. She detached from it and she had a foot out the door. So we talk a lot about detachment as an effective tool for individual recovery, but then also to potentially have an influence. But then non-scientifically, I would say, we do research where we track numbers, but we've never done it with this. I feel like it's about 50-50 in the cases where the partner's detachment results in the drinker's sobriety versus the partner's detachment results in the drinker doubling down and going into a shame cycle and drinking more and spiraling. What is your experience with the partner's role in the healing, in this case, the sobriety of the spouse?
Yeah, I think one of my favorite quotes from Terry Real, who taught me, he was the second model that I follow, is to detach from the outcome. You'll see a lot of people who comment saying, well, what if they don't do what I'm asking them to do? Or what if they don't change their behavior? And it's like, you show up as the healthiest version of yourself as the partner, and you detach from needing their response to be a certain way. You can't make someone change. So you get healthy, you speak things healthy, don't be critical. If maybe you need to make new friends, or you need to get a hobby, or you need to do things you need to work, get better sleep and work out more. You can't make the other person change. And I think, your odds are maybe like my odds in working with people. Like sometimes that detachment will shift the person into being uncomfortable enough to stop the destructive behavior. And sometimes it won't. And it's not up to the partner to fix that.
Yeah. When you detach from the outcome, it doesn't matter whether it works or not in that kind of traditional sense of thinking about it. What matters is that you're doing the right thing and you're doing the right thing for yourself.
Exactly. Like the defensive, well, my husband's never going to stop being defensive. Well, what I want you to work on is the way that you relay the message, not being critical, detaching from the need for him to hear it in the way that you need to hear it, and go about your life. And you'll see You'll see if those changes happen. And if those changes don't happen, again, that's your data to decide what to do with. If your
Yeah.
partner is always going to be defensive and blame shifting, I wouldn't want to be in that relationship. But how do I know what is all their behavior or my behavior? I always say you can't change someone's behavior, but you certainly can open or close the space for the possibility. If I come in screaming an attack, I'm most likely to get a defensive behavior. But if I open the space and I say my complaint as feedback, maybe the other person will be able to hear it. And if
Yeah.
not, that's just, like you said with your example, maybe the other person doubles down. Interesting. When I do my work and I'm healthier and I take care of myself and my self-esteem is higher and I'm more grounded, they double down. What do I get to do with that? And a lot of times that's not the answer people want, but it's the
Yeah.
answer in front of them. And I went through a period of like, I must save every marriage. And I
Hmm.
don't feel that way anymore.
Yeah.
Two people staying together miserable is not a win for me.
Yeah. Oh, you gave me chills saying that when we very first started the podcast early on, we said something like, we want our successful relationship recovery. We want to share that with people and help them get there too. And I said something to the effect of, I think we wanted it more than other people and we want to share that. And oh my God, I got a lot of feedback that I
You can't
deserve.
want it more than, yeah, you can't want it more than they want it,
That's
you
right.
know?
And so many people said, "How dare you?" Just because you guys
Mm-hmm.
it worked out for you, that doesn't mean you wanted it more than we did. And it was a huge learning
Mm-hmm.
experience for me. But I love how you
Yeah,
frame that. Do your work, do the right thing, detach from the outcome, and then use the response you get back, use that as data to make your decision.
exactly.
That's a great way to look at it. So we do have, I said it's kind of 50-50 ish when we do have individuals that get independently healthier, both sides of it, and then they want to know how to reattach. When we get that question, the way I answer it is, Sherry and I never reattached. We never returned to the glommy, gross, codependent, all up in each other's
Mm-hmm.
business existence that we had when I was drinking. We gained
Mm-hmm.
self confidence, we grew individually, and then we found kind of points of mutual connection.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm wondering, am I making too much of this? Do you see a difference between attachment and connection? I know you talk about connection a lot. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting when I saw this question, attachment to me is, and there's so much around anxious attachment and avoidant
Right.
attachment, and like everyone knows what those mean, where they didn't know those things before. But like this attachment is the closeness, the safety and security. It affects how you act in relationships. It is shaped in childhood. The connection that I see is like we share about our day, we have fun together, we make time for each other, we make each other a priority. We can have non-sexual physical touch. We can have sexual physical touch. We are curious. We want to know about the other person. We
Yeah.
have a deeper level of conversations. Those are the connections that I want for people. Because relationships, I mean, good relationships or bad relationships are a key predictor of how long we're going to live, how happy we're
Mhm.
going to live, and how healthy we're going to live. It's more important than whether you smoke or not, what kind of a
Yeah.
relation, what kind of quality you have in those things. So I mean, just my mission is for everyone who possibly can to have the most connected relationship they can. That doesn't mean codependent. I have
Mhm.
my hobbies, you have your hobbies, I have my friends, you have your friends. I go do a lot of solo travel. There's places I want to go, maybe someone else doesn't want to go. That's fine. But then we have that connection within each other as well.
So you can get some of your needs met outside of the relationship, but still have enough confidence in the relationship that that's not a threatening thing. Like when
And I
people
think
say
you
get their
should
needs
get
met,
needs met.
yeah, it doesn't just mean sex. Like there are lots of
No.
needs that need to be met outside the relationship.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Female, I mean, for you, Sherry, like female companionship for me, my friends are vitally important to me.
Mhm.
I love my sport. I love my travel, love my kids, and every moment I get to spend with them. And those can be things that are separate to the relationship, but when the relationship is coming back, it's connected. Not every minute. I mean, we've got life going on, but there's those connections that you can trust and count on happening. making each other a priority. It's one of the biggest things I see today. Everyone's got their kids, and I was guilty of this, got their kids in 6 different sports and music in this direction and that direction. It's like we go days without connecting with each other. But this is your primary asset. Your relationship's your primary asset. So, we're just very busy, and like I said, I'm guilty of it too, but a lot of that takes away from the connection. We need to prioritize the relationship.
Sherry gets her need for cuddling from her cats because their fur is softer than mine. That's probably more than you wanted to know about us, Amy.
That's and she's not cheating. She's getting her needs met somewhere else. That's good.
But I see that look in her eye, and I'm like jealous of the cat sometimes. I'm like, oh God, she loves that cat. That's unconditional love. That cat can't hurt you.
Yeah, I mean, and if he scratches me, he's just a cat. Yeah. It's just
if I scratch you, I'm an asshole man.
Yes, easily forgiven. I mean, I've actually had to go to the urgent care because of a cat bite when I was over grooming.
Over grooming. I've never been over groomed in my life, Amy. I need to get over groomed someday.
But you know the cat's potential, so you're not mad at the cat. It's a cat,
Yeah,
that's right. A little jealous, but not mad. You're right.
Yeah.
Listen, Amy, we say that sobriety doesn't fix anything, but that it's a prerequisite. And often underneath the addiction in sobriety, the couple finds co-occurring addictions. It's really trendy to talk about narcissism these days. And our listeners and the people that we meet, they often have their kind of head spinning, trying to figure out, okay, he's sober, but it's getting worse. Am I married to a narcissist? I'd like us to help them understand narcissism. I've heard you say narcissists live off feed. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I just did one on that. And I think it's very confusing for people because, again, with the addiction issue, with the substance use disorder, that's a diagnosed criteria. And narcissism is different than narcissistic personality disorder, which is the diagnosable criteria, right? I can look like a narcissist at any moment. You can look like a narcissist, but that doesn't mean it's a pervasive pattern, which narcissistic personality is a pervasive pattern. So narcissists feed off of, you'll see a lot of them in higher offices or positions where they get a lot of admiration. Like even someone, you can be like, oh, this is such a great person. They're so philanthropic. And it's like, yeah, but they do that. Some people do that just to get the feedback. You'll hear people say, oh, he's such a great dad, or she's such a great mom, because when they're little kids are like, mommy, daddy, there's so much admiration and there's so much feed for that. But when they become a teenager and they start saying, I don't agree with you, mom, or, I don't agree with you, dad, now you're not feeding me anymore, and I may write you off. I may not pay for your college. I may, you see those kinds of things happen. Knowing they have power, knowing they can get you to react, knowing that they can scare you, those are feed. And all of those things are the energy that the narcissist wants.
That's really interesting. You mentioned Gabor Mate earlier. He got me thinking maybe a year ago now about the concept of a power addiction. Of course, I like to run everything through the frame of addiction because that's the thing I know best. And there's a lot of overlap with what you're talking about. Someone who they just need that constant adoration and admiration. They have no ability to internally fill their own bucket. All of it comes from the outside, and they need it so badly that they'll do some really despicable things to get it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you for clarifying. That's really interesting. I want to close on talking about the responsibility of men to adapt. This is like my thing these days. I can't get off my fixation. In our lifetime, Amy, and since we have the same exact lifetime down to the year, women have achieved educational superiority, financial independence, sexual autonomy, and intellectual equality. And men have yet to adapt. I say that we men need to take our masculine instincts that we've been honing for thousands or millions of years and become emotionally masculine. We can still lead and provide and protect, but it's not about finance and physical safety anymore. We need to lead emotionally intimate conversations. We need to provide emotional safety in our relationships. We need to be protecting our families from critique, criticism, and comparison within the home. We need to take accountability and serve without scorekeeping and whataboutism. And most of all, we men need to grow some emotional grit. Masculinity has to be about emotional maturity. And I think in this day and age when women can earn their own money and they're educated, like this is all that matters to women. 70% of divorces in this country are initiated by women. We need some gritty men emotionally. What do you think about that? Can you react to that statement and tell me where I've got it wrong?
Yeah, I love what you said. And like I said, when I met you was that when you first reached out to me to do the podcast, you hear some of these terms that you say and you bristle at that. But I read the paper that you just wrote, the article that you just wrote on that, and I loved it and I completely agree. I would say that more, and I've been doing this a long time, but more and more it is a man calling me saying, my wife just told me she's leaving me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm completely blown away. What can we do to bring this back together? When the woman will say, I've been asking for these things for decades. I'm not sure why he's surprised. I've been asking for more connection, for him to take more initiation on the difficult discussions, to lead in these ways. And I agree with you. And it's interesting, when I first went on social media last January, I don't know what algorithm I ended up in, but I was getting just shot left and right by the manosphere. Like I ended up in a manosphere thing. And I couldn't believe the comments that were coming in, and just like, and there's hate for men, when some women like, oh, I hate men. What do you need men for? They're no good. But also all women are evil, all women are terrible. And, we have to move out of that, or
Yeah.
we're going to be in big trouble as a society. So, I agree with you. I think women, being born in 73 too, you mentioned like, my mom didn't have the same options that I had, credit cards or being able to take
Right.
out a home loan and that kind of thing. So, we have those opportunities now. And I feel like as women, we really have adapted. We're running businesses, we're getting advanced degrees, regular degrees, and like you said, we haven't lost that nurturing. Like we're still the main nurturers of the household for the kids, and the mental load of the household and all that typically falls on us. And I do see a lot of men who are coming in doing what they've been trained to do for decades, which is what my father was providing. Was it providing in safety? I agree, that was it. But now we don't need that. And the adaptation for men to be more emotionally available, to be more accountable, to not look at themselves as like babysitters or helpers in their family, but to look at them as equals in the responsibility, whether it's mental or physical responsibility. And we're not seeing that come online, and women are frustrated with it. And they say, I would rather take care of myself than take care of myself and you in this relationship. And
Yeah.
I see that especially with people in our age group, like the kids are starting to get, the kids don't have as many needs anymore. They're thinking about them going off to college, or they're going off to college and they're like, why am I still doing this? I don't feel connected. I don't feel close. And they're choosing to walk away. And I think
Yeah.
something's going to change. I agree with you wholeheartedly.
Do you see a lot of sexual desire discrepancy in your practice? And I'm wondering if there's overlap here, because I feel like for a period in a woman's life, especially pre-kids, I mean, there's research that shows there are some hormonal changes that take place after child giving birth, that can lead to less sexual desire post kids. But I think it's also, I've spent 20 years now catering to your needs and not getting any of my emotional needs met. There's just no attraction left. Do you see that?
All the time, all the
Yeah.
time. And for couples that come to see me, rare is the day that an intimacy is not been negatively affected. If they're in this situation. So, I think that the biggest deterrents to sexual intimacy are we give up being honest and saying what we're actually feeling, or we've built up so much resentment.
Yeah.
And those are, if you can clear those things out, then the intimacy can really come back online. But the years of resentment, the years of like feeling like I've not been able to get what I need or be honest about what I need, has built that up. And then there's a discrepancy, and very
Yeah.
common. I mean, it's very like men feel, good and secure and connected in the relationship with sex, and women feel good and secure in the relationship and connected, and then they want to have sex. So it is a difference,
Yes.
that we have to play with. And that's not all. I see this the other way now more often than I used to, where maybe the wife wants more intimacy, but typically it is the husband that wants more intimacy. And so, like, one of the things that I do with every couple that comes in is we do a repair of the full relationship. Like, what's your story of the relationship? The other person has to hear it and validate doesn't mean agree with everything, but they have to hear it and validate it so we can break down some of that resentment. Otherwise, the intimacy, I think, will never come back online.
Oh, that makes so much sense. I appreciate the fact, because we see it too, that the sexual desire discrepancy does not have to be in favor of the man wanting more sex than the woman, but that more often it does happen that way in the kind of traditional cliche way. I like to use that as kind of a carrot when I'm talking about emotional masculinity. Maybe you don't understand in a tangible way why it's important to get emotionally mature and emotionally masculine. Well, here's one. You might be able to, and I can. I have a high libido. I could, like, let's go right now. The wind just shifted directions and now I'm turned on, and I think a lot of men are that way, and they don't understand the need for what we call the sex sequence, the steps. First, I have to create an environment of emotional safety, and then I have to connect emotionally too. So there has to be emotional intimacy. And then my partner might be, and not always, but might be interested in physical contact and sexual contact. And so emotional masculinity isn't just because, oh gosh, gee whiz, women have made a bunch of advancements and I got to catch up. It's necessary to be bringing something to the relationship that makes your partner turned on. And it's not the old days where as long as I protect the entrance to the cave, she owes me sex. Like, that doesn't exist anymore. I've got to do something to earn it. Is kind of a strong word, but I've got to become attractive. And it doesn't matter how often I go to the gym, and it doesn't matter what my paycheck says. I've got to be attractive emotionally.
Exactly. Yeah, I completely and utterly agree with that, for sure. I remember, like I said, I've been doing this 25 years. So one of the first courses I ever took, it was so old, it was a cassette. And it was called Sex Begins in the Kitchen. And I always remember that because it's like, did you give your wife a kiss in the morning? Did you say, have a great day? Did you come up behind her and squeeze her? Did you check in on her during the day? Did you come home and throw your stuff on the floor and sit on the couch on your phone? Or did you engage with her? Did you, ask her how her day was? Were you curious with her? Are you making times for non-sexual physical intimacy? And I tell that to men too, like, engage more with your wife, engage more with the household, be more curious, be more emotionally available, and you're most likely, that's your best formula to get more sex.
Yeah. Oh,
that's the way that it works.
I completely agree. I love that. I love how you talked about when often the husband is the one that calls and sets the appointment and says, I don't know what I need to do. And she says, I've been telling you my needs forever. I know we've got a lot of listeners who are Swifties. I am also a Swiftie. There's a Taylor Swift song called Exile. And oh my God, it's so powerful. The man, Bon Iver, I don't know, whatever.
Bon Iver.
Yeah. Her featured co-star on the song says, you never tell me. Now I'm going to blow the line. You've never told me what you need. And she says, I've told you 1,000 times. And they just keep like harmonizing with each other. And we see that a lot. We've got to develop those listening skills
all the time.
That emotional maturity, that curiosity, always be curious. What a great thing for us to remember. Amy, thank you so much for being with us. Listeners, please check out Amy on relationships on Instagram and TikTok. It is worth your time. We know you're going to scroll and watch reels anyway. You might as well get something positive out of it. And Amy is not only educational, she's engaging. There's an entertainment component. I love watching her talk. Amy, thank you so much for being with us on the Untoxicated podcast.
Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Listener, did you hear something today that is of value to you? please support Stigma, the 501c3 organization that brings you the Untoxicated podcast. We know you're listening on your phone. Why not open that Venmo app and send a fully tax-deductible donation to @Matt-Salas with the last 4 digits 1412. Any amount is great and much appreciated. That's @Matt-SALIS, last 4 digits 1412. And while you've got your phone open, please go to intoxicatedsurvey.org and click radio buttons to help us learn what you've been through. Thank you for listening to the Untoxicated podcast. You've got this, and we've got you.